Hello and welcome back to Molby On The Spot, your weekly chance, thanks to Anfield Index, to hear the wit and wisdom of the man that I'm sharing a podcast with, your friend of mine, the legend that is Mr. Jan Molby. Good evening, Jan.
Good evening, Trevor. We're still here. We're still going strong.
We're still going strong.
Looking forward to the next hour.
Yeah, I am myself. We have quite a lot to get through. There's, I think, a strength of opinion floating around that's unmatched that I've seen in terms of the way people are feeling about the team at the moment. It's quite remarkable. You and I spoke at length in the wake of the defeat to Wolves in the league. I remember saying immediately after getting off the podcast with you to a pal of mine, if they win in the FA Cup, I think I'm going to be annoyed, right? And I want to explain that. For me, the one that counted was the league, and it was such a sort of incoherent, lackluster, horrible effort. Then to go out and do what we did in the cup, because, you know, the cup is the one that we can win. I never bought into that, Jan. And I found myself actually, it's bizarre. It's bizarre. I think it says a lot about my mindset and the mindset of a lot of fans. I found myself vaguely irritated. Like, why didn't you do that in the week? Does that make any sense to you?
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, when we previewed the two games, I thought we'd win one comfortably, and the other one would give us a lot of problems, and that's the way it turned out. But it turned out back to front. You know, I thought all our focus and energy would have been on the Tuesday night one in the Premier League, and then you play around a little bit with the FA Cup. So in terms of that second game when we won 3-1, you know, not a great performance, but we did enough. It's like in isolation, it's an FA Cup game. FA Cup games are about winning, isn't it? Getting through to the next round. But I fully get this thing, and it's almost every other game now, isn't it? Where you go, why didn't you do that last game? You know, because we have a decent enough performance, and then we have, well, the borderline on shockers now, aren't they? You know, some of the performance now is like borderline. If you think about the first half of Forest and the league game at Wolves and the Champions League game in Galatasaray, and whether it's quite incredible, isn't it? How inconsistent we are, and when you go through the players, you know, man for man, no good judging them on what most of them are achieving this season, but you go through the man for man through their careers and what they've been part of and won and whatever, you know what I mean? We've got a world champion run around in midfield, you know. So the drop off, you know, people go to the drop off, it's been massive. It hasn't been massive, but it's been significant, hasn't it? It's been significant enough to make us look worse than teams like Manchester United, who take nothing away from Mike Gary, but they're not a good team either, Chuck, you know what I mean? And we're behind them, you know what I mean? So there's something, you know, we've been saying it all season, there's something that just doesn't look right, you know, and everybody is trying to put a finger on it. What can it be? Probably the one who's almost like trying the least is Arne, isn't it? You know, because he's kind of carrying on with the things that we're thinking, this is not working. You know, when we listen to the starters and this is how we're going to play, and you think, well, I'm not sure that's going to work. You know, last week we were talking about maybe a change of formation, just to try and get something going, isn't it? And I just don't know where the players get into that comfort zone after Friday night at Wolves. You know, what made them sit back in the chair and go, we're back. You know, I just don't know where, as a squad, and whether they got that feeling from that for them then to produce what they produce in Istanbul. And you know, I've heard so many stories. I mean, one of them, there was some guy who wrote an article about the atmosphere, and the atmosphere got to Liverpool. I said, well, if the atmosphere is going to get to us, then we need to find something else to do, don't we, John? You know, so everybody's trying to kind of find excuses, isn't it? It was just, here's what I don't like, Trevor. We've lost 3 times this season against Crystal Palace. I know one of them was on penalties, and we lost twice against Istanbul. Yeah, that just doesn't sit right with me. Okay, you get beat by Galatasaray in the league or whatever, but you don't get beat by them again, do you? And the same with Palace. You don't get beat by these clubs. No disrespect to them, but these clubs beat you. once every 5 years, don't they? You know, that's kind of what they get from, and they have the same problem with Arsenal and Manchester City. They beat them maybe once every 5 years. You know what I mean? But like this season, there's too many of these things. And then I don't know what we're going to talk about the FA Cup in any depth or not, but I'm looking at the game on Tuesday, and it's like, has nobody at Liverpool, whether you're a backroom staff or a player, ever heard about Victor Osimhen? You know, did you not know what it is that he does? You know, it's like almost as if, who the fuck's he? You know, and it was like, you know, it's like in my day we weren't big on like tactical as such, and we wouldn't change from game to game. But you would, Jan, Joe Jordan today. You know, you know what he brings. He's not going to run in behind, but you know what he brings. Get ready for Joe Jordan, yeah. And I would have thought somebody would have said to our defensive players, get ready for Victor. You know, nothing tactically here, but just get ready for what he brings. You know, and it was like they were looking at each other and going, I can't believe how good this fella is. You know, these are the things, Trevor, that once, twice, 5 times a season, all day long, it happens, yeah? It happened in our day, you know, when everybody thought we won every game. Of course we didn't. And you have these performances that, but we're having them every other game, you know, and that's why I can't work out why we're not working harder in just rectifying. Here's one now. When the referee blows the whistle, let's turn up. Yeah? Let's turn up when the referee blows the whistle. Let's be ready, you know, instead of some of the performance, Forest away and Galatasaray away and whatever, you know, where for minutes we can't get out of our own box, you know what I mean? Against, no disrespect, but average teams, you know, average teams to how we view ourselves. And that was a long intro, that was everyone.
That's good though. It's good. Enjoyed that. And here's the thing. I've heard people talking on other podcasts and amongst themselves and on Twitter and in all the various venues. And the vast majority, I think, are rightly disgruntled. But there are people who seem to be going out of their way to present the case for the defence in terms of, I heard one particular opinion echoed in a couple of different places. And it was along the lines of, okay, you're getting angry with the manager at the tactics or the lack of a plan. And I think you outlined there really well what we spoke about the last day. We spoke about how there were no clear patterns of play, no repeatable actions, no plan that we could discern as viewers of the game. And I heard someone saying, well, look, what would you expect? What could any other manager have done given the availability of players this season and given the players that he's had to work with this season? And I found that really, really bizarre because I saw it being repeated again and again as a kind of a, well, what do you expect him to do when you've got all these underwhelming players who've fallen off a cliff in terms of form? You mentioned McAllister, Gravenberg's been equally unimpressive. We've had the troubles with the right back scenario in terms of injuries. The other midfield position has been, well, Curtis Jones seems to be so out of favour that there's obviously something going on there. And the other man who's been our player of the season for the most part, although he's having a little bit of a fall off now, as you would expect, was playing right back too. We've had Hugo Ekitike, who's had a couple of purple patches, been pretty ropey for a long time now. And overly relied upon because of Isak's lack of involvement. I get that. You've had Mo, who's like the fall off there is even more spectacular than McAllister's, and Gakpo the far side. But the problem is, Jan, they will start and they will play most of the minutes if they are available to play, because the managers told us that is what's going to happen. And it's all part of this periodization sort of philosophy. And that is what it is. And people need to get their heads around that's the way it's going to be for till the end of the season. I don't buy into any of this. What could he have done? I just don't get it. For me, as a guy who's not played or coached at the highest level, I look at that team and they seem to be in a way that the Klopp era was for a little while when Pep and Linders was sort of meddling. They seem to be directionless. I don't see an identity, Jan. I see, to me, as an amateur observer, a lack of coaching. Is that too harsh?
Well, obviously, you know, the repeatable action sort of argument that we discussed last week, And then this ridiculous article you read, where somebody's talking about with the players he's had available. Well, the players he's had available this year are basically all internationals, and our strongest 11 has not been massively impacted by injuries. It's more been our fringe players, as we've been lucky with, Van Dijk's been available all season, and a lot of our sort of key players have been available all season. So I see. So what the article is basically saying is that clubs like Brentford shouldn't have an identity because they got lesser players. But you work with what you've got, and we've got outstanding players, haven't we? So across the board, wherever you go, most games, within 5 or 6 minutes, you will notice something. And you, in the back of your head, you go, I'm keeping an eye on that because I think I'll see that again and again and again, and they all do that. I mean, I pop up and watch Chester play every now and again. They play in the 6th tier, but I see things at Chester, and then I see the same thing 5 minutes later, and I see the same thing again. And this is kind of what we're after, isn't it? You can't overdo it with the players that we got, but the way that we're playing at the moment, you do need to give them something to hold on to, isn't it? What do we do in this situation? And I think this whole thing about we want to control the game and be in possession, you still have to be sort of inventive with your passing. When you're a possession team and you want to keep the ball, you still have to pass into that guy that's marked. You still have to pass in between the lines, because otherwise the opposition just go, what, really? So when you see the best two teams we've seen over the last 20 years play like that is Barcelona and Manchester City, yeah? And when they're at their best, and this is at a time in the game where they have no longer interest in scoring any goals, but they still challenge you with every pass, don't they? They still pass it in there, so you got to react, and then it comes back out, and then they go there, isn't it? They've got no intention of scoring that goal, but they're just letting you know, aren't they? Every pass we play, we're going to cause you a problem. Every pass we play, so we want to keep the ball, isn't it? But we're keeping the ball so safe and moving around so slow that there's not a single team that's been surprised by anything that we do. I think it's really disturbing.
Yeah, it's a feeling that I think is shared by a lot of people, and it's unusual to hear some people piping up. It's never surprising when you see ex-players from other clubs having a pop. I think there's a really honourable reason why an awful lot of ex-Reds, who like yourself have represented the club, are kind of holding fire and keeping their powder dry here. I think it's a respect thing. I think it's the culture used to be maybe a little bit different, and maybe it still is that way at Liverpool, even though football in general has changed. So it is quite. I do get that. I really do. But there have been some voices of dissent, and interestingly, one of them was Jermaine Pennant, and I just wanted to show you a couple of things he'd been saying recently, just to see if it makes any sense to you. So there he is. This is one that caught a lot of attention. He says, right, I know Arne Slot isn't on the pitch, but wow, they're his tactics, his style, his instructions. You're playing Wolves, not Arsenal, not Man City. Press them from the front for once. Try to win the ball high. This is not Liverpool, he says. Sorry, it's just not. He also backed that up, talking about Rio must start on Friday. That was before the cup game, after the league defeat. He said again he did more than Gakpo when he came on, and then what Gakpo did in the whole game. He says, you know why he did more? Because he goes to the byline, cuts inside. He's not predictable. Why on earth isn't Slot telling him? I presume it means playing him, if every single fan is thinking it. And then finally, then on the 4th, he goes on, says, no disrespect to Wolves, full credit to them. Still fighting, although 99% going to be relegated for Liverpool. This is the worst defeat of the season, he says. 2 games ago, with 10 games left, they had less points than the worst Premier League team in history of 11 points. Let that sink in. Reference there to Wolves. Look, I guess the reason I wanted to highlight that, people will have their own opinions on Jermaine and his Liverpool career and all the rest of it. That's not really the point. It's not the point at all. The point is someone's out there saying things that an awful lot of fans are saying. having previously represented the club. And I think that it is interesting to hear that. And he seems to be echoing a lot of the ideas that we were talking about there, right? Look, what is going on? And a lot of people were crying out for Rio's inclusion. And it was really obvious, wasn't it, over the last couple of games, more so than it's ever been in terms of his cameos, by contrast with what had gone before, even on both flanks, if we're being honest.
Yeah.
But you had made the point, Jan. I want to, again, just to give the counterbalance to Rio, you had made the point, look, he is still a kid. You do have to manage his minutes. The kid himself has said that he has a good relationship with the manager and he respects what the manager's doing. So, again, just lest anyone think we're going, in one way or the other. There is a balance there, but I get it very hard to make an argument for him not having more involvement when you've got the other two lads who are so far off the boil.
Yeah, it's a massive problem, isn't it? We spoke about it last week because of the way that we play, and our wide players are so important in everything that we do. And Rio in the Friday night game of Wolves did more or less exactly what I thought he was going to do. He stand them up and then use his space. He can go either way, get something from some of the crosses, not something from some of the others, isn't it? But he's still got a lot to learn, isn't it? But just that, youthful enthusiasm doesn't, as of yet, not bogged down by the whole weight of Liverpool having a very average season. So yeah, there is it's almost like sometimes from within you want to do something. And I guess the fact that Arne hasn't played him more is Arne Sloth's way of saying, I'm trying to look after him. This is a player for the future. I'm trying to look after him, isn't it? But I think sometimes there's something staring you in the face, isn't it? And
yeah.
You go,
what do you think about that?
I don't really want to play him, but it'd be silly not to, isn't it? So we arrive at our next game, which is at home against Spurs, who are all over the show, yeah? I mean, surely, and the fact that it's a home game, isn't it? I'm looking, I'm thinking, I know that some people go, and I know probably thinking, well, Spurs is one of the big six, isn't it? But they're certainly not playing well at the moment. So it's like another, I think that's a good game to play him in. Spurs are all over the place defensively. It's at Anfield, so he'll get that support as well, won't he? Because he won't be able to do anything wrong in the eyes of the Liverpool fans, So that's also a big plus, isn't it? Whereas the moans and the groans, Trevor, we're hearing them. Even and you guys over there watching on TV, you can hear it on TV as well, can't you? When we play at Anfield, the fans moaning about certain things and certain players, isn't it? So Rio would never have that. He wouldn't have to experience that. And in terms of Jermaine Pennant, I don't have a problem with his opinion. I can counteract by saying many things, and one of the things will always be this guy has won the Premier League, and not many people win the Premier League, and maybe we've got to give him a bit more time. But I fully get, and there's more people like Jermaine who have kind of reached that where they think, I don't see what turns this, and I think that's the key in the end, is that we can all go, I'll tell you what, this is rubbish, this is, yeah. But then you go, yeah, but okay, what do we do, isn't it? And the one thing is, so sometimes when you think a manager should stay when he's under pressure, you've got to come up with an argument for what turns it. You can't just go, well, all of a sudden we're going to play well, because there's enough evidence this year that we're not just going to start playing well, are we? That ain't going to happen in Trevor. So that's out the game. We're not going to start on Sunday, play well for the next 10 games, because that's not happening. That's not our season. So you've got to look at the thing, well, what turns this, And it's difficult to put your finger on 2 or 3 things where you 100% support the manager and his judges. I find that really, really difficult to find things and go, this is why, and this is why, and this is why. I really struggle with that. Whereas the other way, that drop off of so many good players playing so average at the same time, that is a big worry.
Yeah, and I've personally been saying it for a while in shows. If you have so many problems, you probably only have one problem. And for full disclosure, I've reached the stage now where, for me, I think I'm kind of done. I think it is time to shake it up. I don't have any faith in what's occurring, because I can see nothing that gives me that faith on a regular basis. You can talk about he won the league as much as you like, but if you look at the results from a certain period last season to now, we're a lower middle table team in terms of points accrued. And it's the fall off is remarkable. Something has occurred, and a lot of people are talking about the commitment to the club, the fact his family isn't over here, all those kind of things. These are all different issues that feed into where I am at. I'm just being honest about it personally. That doesn't mean I have to be infantile and start banging the table and go slot out. I don't give a crap about any of that. I'm not interested in doing that. I do want to have a sensible conversation about it with whoever wants to listen to it. And what's really interesting to me, and I think this is really important part of this discussion, fans can get as upset as they want and screech and shout all they want about how things need to change. And they can talk about how and I would say if Rio's good enough, he's old enough, right? In that particular instance. But what we're hearing from the likes of Ornstein, from the likes of Joyce, is that Arne is very much the man. He is believed in, and they are backing him to get it right next season. So that probably comes, I don't know what you think, from a place of, look, this is our choice, and he knocked it out of the park first time round. This is a blip. We'll sort it out. Our recruitment has been spot on, and it will continue to be. That's what I fear, is that there's other things influencing the ultimate backing of the manager. I don't know, maybe I'm being paranoid about that, but it's very much the case, isn't it? I'm sure you're hearing the same, that he is not under the pressure that a lot of fans think he should be.
No, not at all. And when you speak to fans, and obviously the first thing that the people who think Arne's lost time's up at Liverpool, the first thing they say is, when's he going? And all you can offer is what you're hearing. Well, he's not under that kind of pressure. We're nowhere near that. So in terms of their support for the manager, and obviously I'm talking about, it's got nothing to do with the owners as such, but Mike Gordon and then the people underneath him and Michael Edwards and Richard Hughes. On one hand, you kind of want to admire them, for taking a stand, and that's what you got to do in these situations. It's almost like you're either with him or you're against him, and they've gone, we're very much with him, so we're going to stick with it. So on one hand, you want to admire that. Whether that's the right decision or not, only the future will tell us. But I just think that, and Trevor, I don't think there's, we've more than praised these guys enough, haven't we? The praise that Michael Edwards and Richard Hughes and the people before us had on this podcast, and it was deserved because of the job that they did. I just wonder whether we, that whole sort of scenario where Michael Edwards left the club and then we didn't have a sporting director and Jörg Schmatke came in and Clough was left, and whether we just let it all just slip a little bit. Instead of being ahead of the curve, we were now behind the curve. And then that became difficult. And then we had this monster summer where the players resigned. So far, maybe one or two has been good to great, but they've all done okay. But I just wonder whether it's something else that we're missing in those players. That James Milner had and Jordan Henderson had, and Robbo's still there. He's got it, hasn't he? We may be missing something else because when we signed all those leader types, we were praised, weren't we, for the background research we do to make sure we get the right people. This no dickhead policy. Yeah, I'm not suggesting we got dickheads now, but I don't know whether we got that mental strength that you need to win the amount of games that we need to win. And I'm worried about the next, because the next step is obviously Alisson, Van Dijk, Mo, Robbo. They're the next group of players that will believe in our club, mainly due to age. Yeah, and I see some good footballers that we've signed, but I don't see any. Everybody's already now screaming for Dom Szoboszlai to be the next captain. Whatever. Yeah, okay. But again, I'm not 100% sure that he's. I almost think sometimes he's got enough in himself and his own game. And to be a captain. I mean, Phil Neal when I came and Alan Hansen, they had that little bit extra to lend to other people, isn't it? And I'm just not seeing enough of that. Ability is great, isn't it, Trevor? But it always takes more than ability, because if it was only to do with ability, we'd have 1 million professional footballers, because plenty of people had ability, but they didn't have that, that last little bit,
It's funny, one of the words I keep using on the post-match show is that the difference I'm seeing is attitudinal. And there's no metric for that. You can't measure that in stats.
No.
But you can get a feel for it. And you can't be dismissed for saying it. A few people in our chat are pointing out, and I did want to make this point before we finished up as well, that look, the club aren't going to publicly denounce the manager or speak out against them. But we're not really talking about that. We're talking about what's being briefed in the background via Ornstein, via Joyce. That's what's coming out, is positive sounds from there. And they don't have to do that. And yet that's being done. But also weighing up against that is the fact that, well, look, if they backed him, why hasn't he got this contract extension that players are getting? We saw Grav with a 6-year extension there during the week or whatever it was. So there's valid arguments on both sides for sure. And it remains up in the air. People can wish all they want and be as unhappy as they like, but the reality is a whole different ballgame. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the Champions League defeat against Galatasaray. Obviously, we had the cup win at the weekend, and that's great. And as you say, a cup win is a cup win, and it gets you to the next stage. And we probably couldn't have gotten a more difficult draw than we have in the next round, which I think, if the cup was the focus of the two Wolves games, that looks a bit stupid now. That's just my opinion. Yeah. But let's talk a little bit about the Champions League, because that was the other route to salvation for this season. And it was a lamentable enough performance. And I just have the stats here so people can have a quick look. They can see how the game went in terms of the results. There it is. We'll just pop it up. Here's what we did on the night. We had 15 shots to their 11. We had 6 shots on target to their 5. We had half of the ball exactly. A lamentable 313 passes. When you look at the amount that quite often used to get racked up in previous eras, 79% pass accuracy, which is nowhere near what you'd want either, and only 4 corners earned by the Reds over the course of the game. And we go, obviously, behind to that Mario Lemina goal early on, which is a bit of a sucker punch. It's a goal that should not be have been conceded. Way too easy if you're asking me. But just before we get into the game itself, can we just talk about the contrast between what we saw from us, who are still dreaming that if these guys, Mo Salah, Virgil, Alex McAllister, can do their bit, who knows? Talk about the contrast, man, between that and what we saw from some of the teams last night, especially some of the teams up against English opposition. We don't look like we're anywhere near the pace where that's even a semi-realistic or even a valid hope to have. We look so many miles off where the best teams in Europe. Look at PSG last night. I mean, Jesus. Can we honestly say that this is going to offer us a salvation this season, this cup? Seems a stretch.
It's looking more and more likely, isn't it? I mean, even Real Madrid, and without their superstars, but the way that they played, mainly sat deep for the majority of the game, but hit City on a break, lightning quick, everybody working hard. I couldn't see us being able to break that down either. You left out Bayern Munich. It was superb on Tuesday night as well. Barcelona, they've got their own issues, haven't they? But they got attacking players off the scale, So no, it's a dream we have because of our standing in European football, isn't it? That's what our dream is not being supported by our team. It's being supported by our club, isn't it? It's not because of this team we think we might be able to go long or deep in this competition. It's because of our club, isn't it? It's because of our club and our history and the magic at Anfield and European matches under the light. That's what it's about, isn't it? And then what disturbs your sleep, Trevor, and your dream is that we have to play games. Yeah, that's the problem, isn't it?
That's it.
Because Tuesday you're thinking, come on, then this is it. On Wednesday, no, Tuesday. It was Tuesday. So you go, no, this is it now, isn't it? Champions League. Yeah, it's a difficult away game, but we're better than the Galatasaray. We are better than Galatasaray, yeah. And then they produce that, and you go, this dream's turned into a fucking nightmare, you know. So yeah, it's another one. And then you mentioned the FA Cup and the draw against Manchester City. I don't know how serious City are going to take it, because they made 10 changes for the last time, Newcastle away. So I don't know how serious they're going to take it, but away at the Etihad, it's going to be extremely difficult, isn't it? But yeah, this European thing, it is a little worry. You know, when we think back to earlier in the season, we beat Real Madrid 2-0. Fair enough, isn't it? But and we keep saying this thing about our club, don't we? Nobody wants to play us. I don't know whether that's the case anymore. You know.
No, I I think that might be wishful thinking on our part.
Yeah.
I'd say there's quite a lot of people who would be quite happy to play this iteration of Liverpool. And it's sad. It doesn't need to be the beginning of any sort of massive fall away. I saw, I think yesterday, I saw Big Tomo, Phil Tomo, saying that he fancies us for the league next season. I love Tomo. I don't know what he's getting that from, but I think he's saying, look, if we get this right, everything should be good. And I agree, but there are so many elements of the way things are set up at the moment and the preference for certain players and that I doubt if this current setup can do it. I think this squad with some additions could absolutely go and win the league next season, maybe even at a canter. But in terms of just the game itself, that we found ourselves were behind at halftime, I think is the popular way of saying it. Let's just have a quick look, if we could, at the lineups, the lineup for them, because I've found this really interesting. An awful lot of people will have had a familiarity with some of these names from their Premier League days. But the point, of course, is that they are not, if they were the level of player that we should be fearing, they would probably still be plying their trade in the Premier League. But on the night, I thought the likes of Yilmaz, Noah Lang, that kid Sarah, they were tearing it up. Sarah at one stage had the run of the pitch. It was like he was on a slightly different level to everybody else. Torreira and Lamina are names that people would be familiar with. Sanchez, obviously, also. But again, these are not world-class players that we should be fearing. And I agree with you as well. The Victor Osimhen thing, yes, he's a wonderful footballer, but like, you make plans for that, and it looked like we had none. I couldn't agree with you more on that. It just felt to me like, you know, we just don't have enough about us. Because if you look at the Liverpool 11 there, I'm sorry, but on paper, Mamardashvili, I thought, came in and did brilliantly. I'm very, very impressed with that kid. These two, on their day, are the best partnership in the world. This guy has the potential to be international class, as does this guy. Well, he is. They are, both of them. World Cup winner because he's an excellent footballer in an Argentina team. Again, the potential's there at Ryan Gravenberch, and has been underwhelming. Mo Frick and Salah. Dom Szoboszlai, our player of the year. Florian Wirtz, our 100 and many pounds signing, who is clearly a wonderful talent, but again, came back and looked sort of powder puff physically. And Hugo Ekitike, who has shown amazing bits and bobs and has been really good this season, but again, is not in a good period of time. But you just look at the players, and man for man, Jan, that isn't really a contest. That should not have gone the way it went. We should not be in a situation where we're going behind at half time, inverted commas. I don't think that's okay. Especially in the context of having had that really disappointing league result, having Champions League qualification up in the air again with so much competition for those few places. I found it very dispiriting the whole evening. I wondered, and we'll look at again at the other results and have a separate chat about the next the second legs and the other teams involved. But I wonder, is it fair to say that we're now stuck with a guy who is waiting for some magic to happen in the middle of our sort of cautious sideways play, And if it doesn't happen, we're kind of screwed. Like that's I don't see any other game plan. Cody cuts in, Mo cuts in, Hugo might carry the ball a little bit, but I don't see any patterns of play. And unless one man, Florian Wirtz had a period of time there where he was that man. Hugo Ekitike had a time where he was that man. Unless there is that little bit of brilliance, we're kind of stuck. And it had seemed to suit us in the Champions League, but it really didn't suit us the other night. It really didn't. And I want you to double down something you said to me before about the atmosphere as well. I know I'm throwing a lot at you here, but I can't have it that top level footballers like that can't pass straight because of noise, can't track runs because of noise, can't do the basics of the game because of noise. Yes, maybe it's intimidating. Maybe they don't take risks. Maybe we play more cautiously. Jesus, imagine us playing more cautiously. But you don't suddenly become incapable of doing the basics. I think that's infantile. I don't want to hear any more about that. I think it's insane.
Yeah, I agree. And that was the only reason I mentioned it, because I couldn't believe. I fully expect, some people will try and make excuses for Liverpool's performances, and you expect all sorts of reasons. Yeah, injuries and a lack of pre-season and the whole awkwardness around a terrible loss of shots and all these things, isn't it? And then somebody goes, but the atmosphere derailed Liverpool, and you go, I can't take anymore. So if you look at that starting 11 for Galatasaray, if that starting 11 turn up in the Premier League 38 times a season, where do they end up? 15th? I think that's about right, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, some of them have been in the Premier League and not done much. The clubs they were at couldn't wait to get rid of them. But they were inspired, obviously, by the occasion, by the visit of Liverpool. But the biggest worry, and you probably got to be careful what you say, because they're not the same away from home as they are at home. And we also saw that in the last round, where they were terrible in Turin against Juventus. But on Tuesday, they looked better coached than us. And I always think that's a worry, because you're playing a Turkish team, because they do have a little bit of lack of discipline in the way that they want to play. They want to play a little bit off the cuff. They want to be able to do one or two things and whatever. So that was slightly worried that they look better. Then also we've said, and this is another problem I have with Arne Slot's press conference. And when you listen to Arne Slot's press conference, he keeps more or less telling us why we can't win a game. We can't win because of the low block. We can't win because of this and that. So they didn't particularly low block, did they?
They had no block.
Exactly. So my verdict now, Trev, is that we don't struggle against a low block or a high press. We just struggle.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think that's a fair assessment. We just struggle. Whatever the opposition turn up with, we will struggle. Maybe not for all 90 minutes, but we will struggle some stage. But the funny thing about this season, Trevor, it's almost as if we're waiting for something worse to happen, yeah? Because Tuesday could have got a lot worse. Okay, we could have also nicked the goal or two, but it could have also got a lot worse, couldn't it? When we played Forest away that first half, it could have got a lot worse, didn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Even at West Ham, we beat them 5-2. It could have got a lot worse. So there's still something about our season that it never quite turns out. How many of our performances this season have turned out as badly as our performances? Even when you lose 1-0 or whatever, you think, well, we could have lost 3-0 here, you know what I mean? So, almost the only one that springs to mind is the Nottingham Forest one. We were horrendous and we lost 3-0, and that was a clear, okay, this was clear cut, yeah. But in some of the other games, I'm thinking, this could have easily been so much worse, and it hadn't been, so hence the reason when we come to predictions, this thing about, and I don't know what it is, Trevor, but this is probably the only thing we got left to hang our hats on, isn't it? Is that the opposition don't quite punish us. So the mountain we have to climb is never steep as it might have been. Hence the reason that on some occasions we do get there. Interesting.
Yeah, it sure is. I I could go on. I could go on, but I feel like.
Trevor, do you remember we used to do this podcast and we won every week?
Oh mate. Oh mate. Back when our only job was to come up with different ways of saying lads were brilliant, and different ways of saying if we turn up we're going to win.
What's the prediction, Jan? 5-1.
Yeah. Yeah, look, it's quite a stunning fall off, and this is where I think people are a bit disingenuous. I think what you said there was really interesting. There is another version of this season where it's far more humiliating than what we're currently enduring, where the results are way more damaging in terms of the numbers on the board. Even last night, the night before, Osimhen could have done a bit more damage. They had a couple of opportunities that they should have finished in the previous game against Wolves. In the game before that against Wolves, there were opportunities for them. And it's just the way it is now. Teams will get chances against us. And I think on a different day, if Ali isn't doing as well as he is, I thought Mamardashvili, like I said, came in and did really well last night. I think that's awful, really, that we're talking about the goalkeeper. Obviously, they're going to do their best. And obviously, it's not to insult their wall of sound thing that they do. Fantastic, great, I love it. But it shouldn't be intimidating to the group of lads that we had on the pitch. I'd like us to get away from the Reds for a few minutes just so we can sort of change the mood and the atmosphere for ourselves for a few minutes, because I think, like myself, if you were to say fully what you're thinking, it might be a completely different show. But I do want to. Yeah, we're not going to do that. But I do want to have a quick look at the other games that are ahead of us and just see what you think. So these are the results in the first legs. I think everyone hopefully can see that nice and clearly. So obviously there's us with our 1-0 reversal against Galatasaray with the home leg to come. Newcastle with what had been a very creditable, I think, 1-0 lead that got turned around very much at the last minute. I think it was a Yamal penalty. Then you have Atletico with a big old win at home to Tottenham. That looks like a very difficult situation for them now. I would have said it's a very difficult situation for Newcastle as well. Already people are starting to say, maybe Liverpool's result doesn't look too bad, but again, that's assuming that we go and do the business and start scoring goals and don't concede goals. Atalanta have a horror show with their home tie against Bayern, where I think Harry Kane stayed on the bench and they still win 6-1. Leverkusen Arsenal didn't go the way people were expecting, and I think it's fair to say that Arsenal had a very, very fortunate penalty in that one. From what I could see, only highlights of PSG, they really did spank Chelsea. Maybe you have information on that I don't, but on what I did see, the goals, including by the left winger that I think should be a Liverpool player. Amazing. Bodo Glimt, the story of the Champions League so far with their 3-0 win over Sporting and their performances so far. And then Real look to have done enough, I think. Do City have the culture to do an overturn like Liverpool did against Barcelona? I don't think so. I don't think this current iteration of City has that in them. But I'm curious to hear your take on these. Walk us through what you think is going to be the ultimate outcome there. I've just kind of laid out what happened, but very interesting to hear what you think will happen. You can leave Galatasaray, Liverpool to one side. We'll come to that later on.
So, obviously, the first thing that springs to mind is 6 English clubs in action, and none of them won. And 3 of them managed to lose their games by 3 goals. So, the Premier League is still the best league in the world, but I don't think like our top 6 isn't significantly better than the top of the other leagues. The top of the other leagues can compete with the best we've got. What makes the Premier League what it is probably the team from 6th, 7th down to 20th. They are stronger than what they are in, and also because of the financial resources they've got. So Tottenham, you can say, unfortunate errors, or just errors. In my book, it's errors. Yeah, it's errors being made by a young goalkeeper who shouldn't have started, but he did start the game. Apart from the mistakes that they made, the game was very much 50-50, but they're now 3 goals behind. They don't have the whole thing to pull that through. Manchester City don't either, because I think Real Madrid will score. Although, I would like to see this Real Madrid team under pressure in that. City scored 1-0 in the first 15 minutes because they were never under pressure in Madrid. They were always in control. So, PSG, Chelsea, choo-choo, Trevor. Choo-choo after 70 minutes. And then you lose 5-2 in an away game in a knockout stage in the Champions League. You must be stupid. Yeah? You go, we'll lose at 3-2, we don't lose at 5-2, yeah? But they carry on playing, and he said it himself after. And, some people go, well, at least he's honest. I think he's naive. He's talking about, we want to play out from the back, we want to play short. And you go, get it up to your end. Get it away for your own half. And the boy you mentioned before, Kvaratskhelia, came on in the 62nd minute, assisted 1 and scored 2. So they probably thought, let's take this game out of the reach of Chelsea. Arsenal, unbelievable penalty again, but it's never a penalty in the Premier League, but Champions League, UEFA, if there's any contact, they can live with it being a penalty. But Arsenal again were poor, uninspiring. Newcastle, I was at the Newcastle game Tuesday night, and they did okay. They brought exactly what I thought they'd bring. Plenty of pace, balls in behind, but I just can't see Barcelona playing like that again. So Arsenal will turn around the Leverkusen game just because Arsenal is a Premier League team, physically stronger, bigger squad. It could be 1-0, it could be 2-1, whatever. Of the others, I think they might all go out, and nobody would have thought that, would they, Trevor? Nobody would have thought that with 5 of them having a second leg at home. Everybody thought that's the cushion that you need, isn't it? There's your safety net, second leg at home. Yeah, don't go away and make a mess of it. Well, 3 of them did.
They sure did, and it's going to be interesting to talk about one of those teams when we're having a look ahead to the games to come. And maybe we should just go there now. In fact, let's do that. Liverpool obviously have Spurs at the weekend, and if we're being honest, things are not going well for Tottenham at all. And I wonder what you think is going to happen there, because I've seen an awful lot of speculation that I will just put the Tottenham results of late up here for everyone to see. There's been a lot of speculation, Jan, that there could be a sort of new manager bounce happening ahead with Igor Tudor. Certainly has been a very, very rough start for him. The 5-2 against Atletico. And people should bear in mind where Tottenham finished in the group stage of the Champions League. Like, let's just get that straight as well. It's not like they had a nightmare. They are where they are because they finished really high in that group stage, or league stage of it, rather. They had a home defeat to Crystal Palace. They were defeated away at Fulham, spanked by Arsenal 4-1 at home. Newcastle beat them at home. United beat them, and Spurs are away in that one. The last point that you can see Tottenham getting is an unexpected one back against City on the 1st of February. It's a nightmare situation for them, to be fair. I wonder what you think in terms of the challenge that they're going to pose. Have you heard anything that I haven't in terms of whether or not they might have a new setup there in terms of manager by the time we get around? Maybe something happened today that I'm not aware of because I've just come straight from work.
So obviously Spurs made a big deal of announcing yesterday that Igor Tudor would be doing his press conference on Friday before the Liverpool game, which I thought was a bizarre statement that you come out and announce. Liverpool don't come out today and announce, oh, Arne will be doing the manager's press conference on Friday, because he is our fucking manager, isn't he? You know what I mean? So I don't get why Spurs thought it was important for them to come out and announce that Igor Tudor will be doing the press conference, because everybody assumed that would be the case, unless you hear different. I cannot for my life understand or work out why he's still there. I'm not a fan of player power. I don't like player power at all. You know, clubs with strong managers, they're the ones who have success, yeah? Where the players have the power. If you give the power to the players, you need the best players in the world. Otherwise, it ain't going to work. We saw that at PSG. It didn't work. Luis Enrique came in, he went out, discipline, let's go, and put it together. So I'm not a fan of player power. But I think the players at Spurs are so incensed with the manager that no professional athlete should ever not give 100%. But I can see Spurs coming to Anfield on Sunday going 1-0 down and then heads down. So I find it amazing. I listened to Harry Redknapp on the radio today, and you only listen to Harry Redknapp today on the radio, Trevor, because, and you should know this, but you probably don't, it's Cheltenham week, Trevor. You know, it's 4 days of the best horse racing in the world. And tomorrow, Friday, we have the Gold Cup, and Harry Redknapp owns the favourite in the Gold Cup. So he's been interviewed, and also in that interview, they said, what about Spurs? And he went, I spoke to Daniel Levy. Let's not forget that Daniel Levy is no longer at Spurs. The Lewis family, I think they're making all the decisions now. And Harry Redknapp said, I spoke to Daniel, and Daniel said, and I'm not just saying this, Harry, because I'm speaking to you, but if I'd have been at Spurs, you would have been in charge from now to the end of the season. 78-year-old Harry Redknapp. So I think the problem Spurs have got is that if you sack Igor Tudor, what do? Do you go for another? Igor Tudor is a proper, although his record was yes otherwise, but he's a football manager, isn't he? And he wants to have another job as a football manager. It's whether Spurs goes with another football manager who wants to be a football manager for the next 10 years, or whether they go for somebody with Spurs connections who can lift them, and it's just there to the end of the season. You know, and I think that might be what they're battling with. Yeah. Somebody said today, and it might even be my son, who said they're being linked with Sean Dyche. So I'm like, fair enough, but what do you do with Sean Dyche? Let's say you bring Sean Dyche in and you stay up. What do you do at the end of the season? You then keep him. Sean Dyche, it's ridiculous, isn't it? You know, so I do, however, think that. Do you know, if I was Spurs, I'd give the job to Jurgen Klinsmann to the end of the season. Come in, live in America. Obviously, I think his last job was the American national team. Bring in Jurgen Klinsmann to the end of the season. You know, get the fans on side, the players. The big thing with Igor Tudor and the players, you know, and Igor Tudor was a fine player. He wasn't a great player, but he was a fine player. There's no respect. You know, Klinsmann walks into that dressing room. The players can't say anything because 60,000 people go, never you mind. He was a proper player. And you don't have that with Igor Tudor, you know. There's no, you know, I was at the Arsenal game. That was his second game, I think. And already then people are going, who is this fella? And it was almost as if Spurs deliberately wanted something totally different from Thomas Frank. Not in terms of the way that he played necessarily, but in terms of personality. Thomas Frank is a arm around the shoulder, talk to the players, you know, open debate, get everybody involved. And this Igor Tudor's come in as almost as like, you know, bang, bang, bang. And wants just like shock treatment, some of the things that he says and some of the changes he's made to the team. And obviously the goalkeeper on Tuesday, he replaced after 16, 17 minutes. And I just think after what happened on Tuesday, one thing is taking the goalkeeper off. And that probably wasn't a bad decision, yeah? You know, because he's having a nightmare. But I think it's what happened after, isn't it? You know, the lack of empathy towards the goalkeeper. And I think the rest of the players will go, you know, and it only takes the players to get together and go, listen, we're not having this chance, you know. And there's plenty of ears, isn't it, Joe? You know, speak to, we got almost two directors of football, one of them being a Dane, isn't it? Just let them know that, hey, listen, we ain't playing for this guy.
It's funny, I saw someone trying to put it off on Pedro Porro. There was a little shot of Pedro going over having a word in Igor's ear, and people were trying to put it off onto Pedro. That Pedro was the one who made the call, whether it was out of empathy or not. But regardless, it's the manager's decision. And when you see the kid walking off completely ignored by the manager who's shouting away at the players, I can't remember if it was Sky or TNT I watched it on, but they were beside themselves about that. And I think it's a very good point. I mean, it just did show a complete, at best case scenario, it showed a lad who's so distracted by the stress that he didn't even pay attention to what he should have been paying attention at in the moment. Interesting for sure. And whether or not there is a change, we'll see over the next hours and days before that game. And just in terms of what they might bring in terms of challenge, it's not like I said, they've done really well in the Champions League early stages. And the players that they had on the pitch there, the unfortunate Kinski, Danso, Romero, and Van de Ven. I mean, everybody's making big noises about Mickey Van de Ven. People think Romero's a solid citizen. They've got Porro and Spence on the flanks. Gray and Sarr were their midfield presence. Tell and Kolomuani either side of Richarlison. And on the bench, they can call in the likes of Vicario. They've got João Palhinha there. They've got Xavi Simons, who's been a disappointment for them. Dom Solanke, Conor Gallagher as well. And, you know, then Dragusin, Austin, Oluseyi and Roswell make up their squad on the day. And they have had some injuries, Jan. But you say, you know, if they turn up and maybe go a goal down, when you see that 11 there, and again, you compare it to the prospective 11 Liverpool are going to be able to pull out against them, they should be going a goal down, man. It's just that we don't seem to do that type of thing anymore in terms of early goals. It was such a rarity when we saw it recently. We were taken aback.
So, yeah, but that would be very much, I mean, and I'm not an advocate of saying this, but had Jurgen Klopp been our manager, he would have been licking his lips, wouldn't he? You know, a wounded animal coming to Anfield. We're going to press him with an intensity in the first 5 minutes where we just know they'll buckle. And then we'll just take it from there. So yeah, the key is the first goal, the timing of the first goal. Obviously, what helps us is that Mickey van der Ven is suspended after his red card. Whether they decide to go with a 3 again, I don't know. But it's right, of course. They can't defend. They don't have a strong midfield, and they wasted so much money on attacking players that are nowhere near the level. You know, these wide attackers who bring nothing. You know, there's a couple involved there with Tell and the boys on the bench, Xavi Simons, and they brought Conor Gallagher back from Atletico Madrid. There's a player in Conor Gallagher, but they haven't managed to find a position for him, and he has to be fair. He has looked horrendous. But you mentioned the last time they got a point, I think, was against Manchester City. 2-0 down at half time, and they found something. So there's good footballers there. All those names, there's good footballers. So on their day, and if we're not, which is every chance we're not, it might just every 5 minutes where they don't go behind is going to be massive for them, isn't it? 5, 10. What was it the other day? 4 goals after 26 minutes or whatever against Atletico Madrid. So if they can go to Anfield and go 15, 20, 25, 30, you know, all of a sudden that's going to be building for them, isn't it? You know, so I just can't see anything other, Trevor. I don't even think we need to play well to beat them. We will create a couple of chances. We'll take our chances, and yeah. But I think maybe that's something to do with the fact that Igor Tudor's still there. That they don't want a new manager to come in, and his first game is at Anfield. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely, we should have more than enough for this team, but we've been saying that all season. I don't want to even talk about the Liverpool lineup because who the fuck knows, Jan? Except we kind of do know, don't we? We just do know what it's going to be.
For starters.
Yeah, exactly. And there's literally no point in talking about it until something changes there. Let's drive the bus to the part where we get what you think is actually going to happen realistically in both games. I'm getting the feeling that you see a win against Spurs. Give us your shout for the second leg against Galatasaray on Tuesday night as well.
Yeah.
So both games then.
I shouldn't really be saying this, isn't it? But 2 of the last 3 games, even the players cannot, in their own head, deny what's happened. or more importantly, what hasn't happened. You know, so this is like a wake up call. I'm not suggesting, Trevor, that we're going to start playing well, but I am suggesting that we've got 2 home games, and that will be enough. The fact that we're at home, and the fact that we're playing Spurs all over the place, and a poor traveller will mean that we'll win both games. We'll beat Spurs 3-1. And we'll beat Galatasaray 3-1.
6 goals, Jan has promised you. You heard it here first.
Well, we scored 5 in our last home game, didn't we? In 1 game, Trevor.
That's it, buddy. That's it. I mean, this man knows what he's talking about. I'm absolutely all in, as ever, with Jan's predictions. And thanks, buddy. We do appreciate it. It's tough going at the moment because we feel like we're kind of stepping on eggshells. We're walking around the same subjects all the time. It's not necessarily that the results are bad that makes it tough. It's more that it's a frustrating situation that we feel we can't even say stuff about because it's not going to change. So it is a tough place to be, and we appreciate you for all your opinions every week, as usual.
I think it's easier to find winners at Cheltenham, Trevor, than to work out this team of ours.
I forgot it was Cheltenham week in terms of talking to you about it. I didn't forget it. I actually do know what's going on. I'm part of a work sweep. Gold Cup Day tomorrow. Is Harry Redknapp's horse a Willie Mullins horse?
No, it's not. No, it's the jukebox. The jukebox man, and it's trained by Ben Pauling.
Okay, one to watch out for. Hopefully 78-year-old Harry will be happy. We'll talk next week. Thanks to Jan as ever. Thanks to you for listening or watching if you've been watching live. Thanks for the people in the chat room having the chats. Good to see you over and back, talking to each other in a pleasant way. It's nice to see. We'll be back with you next week. Jan and I will have 2 games to look ahead to and 2 games to look back to. This is the time of the season where things can happen. It's just that we're not sure if they will or not. Until next week, good luck. All right, bye.